planning on going to Fine Arts Convention? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you don't know what that is. Okay. So it's the Student Summit. It was the convention that we were going. Everyone listen up, look up. Andre, shh. All right. I have everything you need right here. We're going to do this Sunday a bake sale. So if you want to go afterwards, we'll have this. You can read out. It has all it's part convention, part fine art. So you will be competing, but there's a speaker too. But everything will be in the back. But if you do want to go, we're going to do a bake sale, so it'll be easier paying-wise for it. All right? And then this Sunday is also Baptism Sunday. And Bella is going to get baptized, so we want to show support. So I expect everyone to be there. And if anyone else wants to get baptized. So we're going to get right into it now. We are in Rock Week 5. Everyone said Rock Week 5.
Rock Week 5.
Last week we talked about how Jesus changed Simon's name to Peter, which means the rock. Jesus turned Peter's greatest weakness into one of his biggest strengths. See, we have to remember, when we are distant from God, it determines our strength or our weakness. And that Jesus uses reminders. The title of the sermon today is Reminders Part 2. It was so good that I have to do a part 2, you know? So we're going to get right into it. We're going to be in Luke chapter 22, verse 60. Peter said, "Man, I do not know what you're talking about." Immediately, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. This was a reminder. At that moment, the Lord turned and looked at Peter, and suddenly the Lord's words flashed through Peter's mind. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Point number 1. Let faith define you, and failure redefine you. Remember, Peter was following Jesus from a distance. And from a distance, he had moments of weakness that caused him to fall. But we have to understand, with God, failure isn't final. This isn't the end of his story. Failure didn't define Peter. No, it redefined him. Don't let failure define you. Let it redefine you. If you fall, you have to get back up. We can be defined by failures or by faith. You might have failed multiple times in different situations, in anger, in stress, in heartache or heartbreak, or maybe temptations. You might be in the middle of a difficult season. Maybe it's a temporary assignment or a prolonged season of preparation. But know that with God, failure isn't final. It's a season, not a sentence. It's an assignment, not your address. It's preparation, not punishment. This is where you are today, but that's not where you're going to stay. You may be there right now, but you won't end that way. You have to find faith to get back up. But how do you find faith? It's actually really simple. Super simple. Keep your eyes on Jesus. It's that simple. Do you have a wired connection? We talked about this last week. Jesus is like our Wi-Fi. When you have a wired connection, you have some of the greater connection in the building. The Holy Spirit is our wired connection. And that connection closes the distant gap. See, in this moment, the Bible says Peter and Jesus locked eyes. And there's some people that you can lock eyes with. Maybe it's your mom or dad or a friend, and they don't even have to say a word, and you know what they're thinking. This was that moment for Peter. How many know what I'm talking about? I mean, I know. Why don't you look right now? I believe that Jesus spoke to Peter through his eyes. And it wasn't to rebuke Peter or to reject him, but to remind him. It was a reminder. It said, remember, Peter, I prayed for you. I prayed for you in this moment. In verse 32, but I have prayed for you, Peter, that you would stay faithful to me no matter what comes. Remember this, a reminder. After you have turned your back to me and have been restored, make it your life's mission to strengthen the faith of your brothers and sisters. You have to remember, Jesus is always praying for you, no matter what. In this moment, Jesus prayed for Peter. In a moment of failure and weakness, and Jesus prayed for him. In this moment, it may have felt like a failure, but was just a reminder that failure isn't final. This momentary denial didn't define him. God uses reminders, but so does Satan. The rooster was a reminder for Peter. Every time he probably heard a rooster, he probably hated it, because it was a reminder that Peter denied Jesus not once, not twice, but 3 times. My grandfather, he did have PTSD. He was in World War II. And so anytime he would hear a loud sound, he would jump. And it was just a reminder to him. If we choose to stay here, it can define us. But if we choose to get back up, it can redefine us. Which one are you going to choose? I think it's simple for me. Peter must have remembered Jesus' words because he ran and he wept bitterly. This was repentance. It became a redefining moment in Peter's life. But imagine the agony of the next few days. Jesus was gone. He was nowhere to be found. Peter didn't know what to do. And he probably just went back to his old ways, like before he met Jesus. He probably grabbed his brother and went back to fishing. And actually, in John chapter 21, verse 3, Peter told them, I'm going fishing. And they all replied, we'll go with you. So they went out and fished through the night, but caught nothing. Peter went back. They didn't know what else to do because Jesus was gone. They went back to their old ways, and they just went fishing. And verse 4 says, Jesus was standing on the shore. But Peter and the disciples did not realize that this was Jesus. They heard someone, and they could see someone, but they didn't realize it was Jesus. But why was that? It was because of the distance. Jesus was on shore, and the disciples were in the middle of the sea, in the middle of the water. They were way out there. And when you are closer, you'd obviously be able to recognize them. See, Jesus said, my sheep, hear me, know my voice. Distance will hinder you from hearing and knowing the voice of God. While the closer you are, the better you can hear and understand. It's like this. He is always there speaking, but distance determines whether we can hear him or not. Jesus said, friends, have you caught anything? And it was probably hard for them to admit it, because it was always hard for us guys to say that we didn't catch anything. We didn't catch any fish. Jesus said, cast to the other side. And Peter was thinking, wait a minute, I've heard this one before. Remember this. This was a reminder, Crossfire. This was the very first memory Peter had of Jesus. In Luke 5, Jesus previously performed the same miracle. When Jesus told Peter to follow him, to leave his boat, and to become a fisher of men. Jesus revealed this to him through a miracle. This was a reminder. And sometimes we need reminders, but that's okay. But not only did Jesus reveal himself, he reminded Peter of who he was. Peter, you are a fisherman. You are a preacher. You're not just the rock. You are literally Dwayne the Rock Johnson of the Bible.
Yo.
So, the original OG, okay?
Yo.
Original OG.
Maui?
Jesus recreated this moment to send him a message. Nathan, be quiet. This message was a reminder. Peter, I called you out of this. But think about this for a second. How many times have you returned to a situation that God has led you out of? It happens. Peter returned to a season that God called him out of. Instead of stepping into a new season, he stepped into an old season. But right before this passage, in John chapter 20, Jesus appeared to Mary at the empty tomb and told her to give a message to the disciples and Peter. You have to notice how Jesus singled out Peter. Jesus was sending a message to Peter that he had, even though he had denied him and he failed him, Jesus was still planning to use him in miraculous ways. In this moment, Peter probably felt unworthy, unwanted, and really uninvited. Have you ever felt like this? I know I have. This is how Peter felt. Peter needed a personal invitation from Jesus. This sermon is Jesus' personal invitation to you guys. Point number 2, Jesus brings revelation to your desperation. Jesus wanted and needed Peter to know that he still loved him. And that he still had great, big plans for his life. Even though he failed, even though he denied him, he had great plans for him. This moment was for Peter. And this moment wouldn't be any more, it wouldn't affect anyone else other than Peter. It was his defined moment. This service could be one of those moments for you. See, Peter, who failed, who had denied Jesus, and who went back to something old, he still was going to use him in a real mighty way. And let's be real. We've all been through these things. We've all gone back to situations we probably shouldn't have gone back to. There's no perfect teenager or perfect adult in this room. We're all human beings. We're all real people with real problems. Let's be real. Even though Kyleb, she sometimes thinks she's perfect. But I live with her, so I know it's not true. Okay. Crossfire is a real place for real teens with real problems who really need a real God.
Amen.
Jesus uses reminders. This was a reminder that hit Peter. It was like an aha moment. Peter remembers Jesus' words. It hit him like a wrecking ball. Play the video.
Bro. Here we go.
I came in like you.
Steve's
Listen, you gotta get the point. This was a real moment for him. A moment where he realized that there was a lot more in his life. A lot more meaning, even though that he's human and he still fails. Jesus still uses him in a mighty way. Peter jumped into the water and he swam to Jesus. With the other disciples just paddling still in the boat, he just left them. Peter's a lot like a lot of you guys teens. He always thinks, he doesn't think before he does. There we go. But you have to love his enthusiasm. Sometimes like Nathan's enthusiasm.
I didn't hear you what?
Enthusiasm. Your enthusiasm. Your excitement.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Alright. He had a lot of passion too. Kind of me. Alright, listen up. Come on guys, listen up. Peter had to get to and just stay in the boat like the rest of the disciples. But the other disciples were in a hurry. Peter was determined to get to Jesus as fast as he could. And when some of you realize that Jesus put this whole service here for you, you are not going to walk to the altar, you're going to run. When Peter got to the shore, you know, all the other disciples did in the boat. They were probably cheering him along. Come on, Peter, you can do this. Jesus had a fire. This was recreating another moment for Peter. Another reminder. Another defining moment. Remember, when Peter denied Jesus, where was he?
In jail?
What was he by?
In jail?
He was by a fire.
Oh,
When you stay with Jesus,
see where they like slice the lemon.
that's another reminder for Peter. It was another reminder for Peter when he was with Jesus. All right, listen up, guys. Come on. If I can have the worship team come back up. We're going to start off in John chapter 21, verse 15. Shh, come on, listen, guys. This is serious. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And he said, yes, Lord. He said, yes, you know I do. He said, I love you, Jesus. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he answered, yes, Lord, you know I do. You know I do. And he said, take care of my sheep. And then he asked him for a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he said yes. But he was hurt by this. He asked him 3 times. But this was to give him a reminder. He said, do you love me? And he said, yes, Lord. You know all of these things. You know I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. See, fire refines. This was a reminder. This was a reminder and a redefining moment for Peter. Jesus called him by his full name. Kind of like my mom says, Kyleb Hall, or Kylie Brianna Hall, or Carson Savannah Hall, or JoJo Camden Hall. You know what's going down. When they use all the full names, and something's going to happen. Remember, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. So Jesus had Peter repent 3 times. Jesus recreates another moment. A moment to serve as a reminder. The Bible says that in this moment, Jesus restored Peter. He restored the relationship. He restored his confidence. He restored his calling on his life. He restored his position. And this moment, this would serve as a reminder. It wasn't for failure. This wasn't to remind him he failed, because we all fail. No, this was a reminder of restoration. Jesus wanted Peter to remember whenever he saw a fire, this was a reminder, or a moment, and it wasn't for denial. It was his profession, not of weakness, but Peter was restored.